Hello, everybody. All right. So, anyways, all right. So, Rick, how'd your day go today?
Mine has gone good.
I know you probably went to church this morning, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
over church. Then I was home. Watched Chosen season 2, episode 7 with Rex from Devil Flyer.
Mhm.
Um, and then watched some Dead Zone. Finished watching the Dead Zone actually,
Yeah.
and then played a little video games, and then I'm on here.
Well, I myself, as I was telling you earlier, I didn't get to bed until like about 3:30, 4 o'clock this morning. Got up just before 9, so just barely over 5 hours of sleep. Had a shower,
Lovely.
went out the store, got my energy drink, started sending out all the StreamYard links, of course, to everybody. Um, then took a little, then kind of got caught up on all my subscriptions there for a while there. Um,
Just
then
before 9. Well, I would have been probably up.
9 a.m. my time, that would have been
Yeah,
noon
yeah,
your time.
yeah. I would have been on my way home from church,
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
probably.
and then I kind of took my mind off some stuff and just looked up some other stuff. And then from there ended up just I was just so drained that I was like, I tried to basically I got my got the stuff set up for this day needs or this weekend needs history,
Yeah,
and then just and even though I didn't finish right away, ended up having to take a nap and then finished up, just putting the tags in on YouTube and all that. Now you have that tag box you fill out in your
yeah,
videos. Yeah, I filled that out and then yeah, I obviously don't fill that out until like until before the show, closer to the show. I don't, because I still
yeah.
have to figure out like what I'm gonna do, obviously. Um, so I know we probably let's see, we have I think it's just you and me right now, but as we wait for more people to come in, just a reminder, of course, if you haven't already, for those of you who haven't already, if you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be appreciated. Also, anything we talk about tonight grabs your attention, um, feel free to um,
Comment and
comment and ask questions. Yeah, actually, I just remembered something too. I'm gonna need to go off camera for a quick sec, Rick. I'll be right back.
did you just remember to put your phone down or whatever? The not disturb.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that. You see, before I got my new, and I've had this new phone now for the last 2 or 3 months, right? So
Yeah,
before that, with my old phone, I just had it off all the time.
yeah,
So I was never in the habit of like turning it off and on like this.
yeah,
But I just because I just had it off all the time, more or less. So I had the
yeah,
ring off all the time. Now it's like I have to, I keep forgetting to start getting back in that habit again. So
yeah.
anyway,
I'm the same.
and if
Turn it off for church and forget to turn it on afterwards.
yeah, anyways, Rick, if
We'll
you
see you in a
wanna
second.
if you wanna introduce yourself and maybe share any links to what you're doing this week, I'm gone. Go for it.
Okay. Well, for most of you probably know, I am Rick Piper, creator of Cross Comics and all its properties, like the Canadian Shield here. Um, and I produce comic books, and well, one is Canadian Shield, another is Snowdrift. But I also do YouTube, and here, let me share a couple links from this past weekend, yesterday and today, that I put out for a couple of videos, short videos, which um, are some old designs for the Canadian Shield, and so. And that one's showing off some old designs, and then one's me redrawing, remastering an old design. So I'll put a link to two different ones. The one showing off a bunch of the old designs was today. The one showing was redrawing was yesterday. And tomorrow I will put up another page of drawing the Canadian Shield. Another of two. 2 days in a row of Canadian Shield, then 2 days in a row of Snowdrift till we get through it, and then we'll probably end up doing some of Snowdrift 2 for coloring. So I'm not sure what else I can say here while I'm thinking of nothing to do. So we're waiting for Mike to get back. If people have yet to, please go check out either Melvin #3 on Fund My Comics or The Great Cyclopean issue 5. So I guess that'd be The Great Cyclopean 5. Here, I'll put a link to The Great Cyclopean 5 as well in the chat. Let's see. Messages.
So here are some of course, Rick's links here. Sure, he's already explained what each of those links are. So
yeah, two of them are for videos on my show that I released today and yesterday, shorts, so they're under a minute each. And the third one is Chris's link for Fun My comic.
Oh yeah, he's doing his latest Great Cyclopean chapter on there.
Yep.
Yeah, I did send him and Diana a link. So
yeah,
well, you would think that I know that they're busy on Sunday because they got family and all that, but you would think that Chris would still want to try to come. Chris and Diana would want to come on here for if for nothing else
to promote.
Yeah, promote. Granted, I know I may not have the biggest audience in the world, but every little bit helps.
Yeah. For sure, I get that. Well, they're trying. I know they're trying to set up stuff and all that for that. So hopefully, maybe in the next little while, they will do that.
Well, yeah, I know that. I guess Diana was getting a little flustered because Chris seemed to be kind of being a little too loose with what they do on the stream. She wanted to be a bit more focused. So
yeah,
So, but well, you see, particularly with those who have projects like them, like Tim, like even like Rex and Shadow, you would think, Grant. I know I don't have the biggest viewing audience right now, but it still would be it's still any shot you got at promoting. Why not?
Yeah.
But anyways, as we wait for more people to show up, and I'm hoping more, and I did send it out to sent the link out to everybody. RJ, Metal. I even suggested Metal that if you wanted to, you could also invite Marsupial.
Yeah.
Terry. I know Terry said he's been busy of late, but
yeah. Well, Metal usually ends up showing up a little bit late. Usually on this, he's
Yeah, I know.
either walking the dog or something like that, going for a walk himself.
Yeah.
So hopefully
So,
he ends up showing up a little later.
let's see. I'm looking at the Facebook page right now. I know that Tim, Doc, and Diana are all apparently logged in on Facebook. They're on. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. Let me.
Yeah. I can message Tim.
Yeah. Well, he'll
Uh,
probably just say that he's busy or something like that. But yeah. I'm gonna. Well, now it looks like Tim just went off. It looks like. But I'm gonna message Doc and Diana here.
I just sent him a message. Say, hey, I forgot to put your show, Mike's meant on Mike's. Hey, gonna come on. Maybe get a little time to promote meant, and then I put meant on Mike's. I forgot to say, hey, gonna come on Mike's. Maybe get a little time to promote, but I forgot to put Mike's in the first sentence. But it is what it is. So we're coming up on quarter after. It's 12 after now.
Yeah,
So what?
I'm messaging Doc. I'm gonna message Diana here in a sec.
Yeah,
Um, so if I'm silent, it's because I'm focusing on typing here.
yeah. I get. Yeah, I get. Yeah, I was just gonna try and engage a little in conversation
Yeah.
while you're typing.
Hmm.
Just saying. For those that may be listening, what are we going to be going over tonight, or what articles do you have planned?
Well, of course, we're gonna review what you and I read on Friday. Hopefully, I'm looking forward to hear, for everybody else's sake, of course, when we get more of our panelists here. I'm looking forward to hearing you share your impressions on what we read the other night.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I've got a couple of articles in mind to help fill out the time to go over. One is from Bleeding Fool, um, in which Avi talked about how what a lot of the Jewish comic creators back in the golden age, what they helped to establish, is now being torn down by a lot of the wokesters. And then there's another interesting little story. Apparently Donnie Cates was involved in a car accident recently, and he according to him, he suffered some brain damage due to the effects of the car accident. So,
Uh,
um,
so these sound like some interesting articles to go over, and of course, it'll be good to share some thoughts on the comics from Friday. Um, and hopefully we can get into some other conversations about this, that, or whatever
yeah.
on if some other people come on the panel, and who knows what sort of conversations we'll get into because
Hmm.
based on this stuff as well.
Yeah. Um,
Come on, Rick, think of something to say.
I know we're kind of doing dead air here. It's
Yeah.
not
Um,
always a good thing, but it's kind of hard when you don't have other people to interact with too.
yeah.
That's the thing. Sometimes it's hard to carry on. Sometimes when you're doing a panel show, it's hard to carry it on with just a couple people because it's like and when you're trying to split your concentration between a bunch of different things. Um,
Yeah. So hopefully this week I'll be getting some more work done on the Canadian Shield. I didn't get a lot of work done last week. Just felt in a funk last week for working on comic stuff. So I gotta get it.
I know the feel. I know the feeling. Sometimes the days they can drag on a bit. I mean, even as a commentator,
Yeah,
I can feel that way sometimes. Um,
didn't get half of what I wanted to accomplish last week done. Uh, and I didn't get read anything comic this week to do a review on.
and Chris just popped back on too, on the Facebook. But since I just sent a message to Diane, I'm not going to repeat that. Because it basically would have said the same thing. But anyways, yeah. So according to this, we only got one person watching now.
Uh, well, I know I'm watching. I've got it on here.
They're probably just being stingy again, not counting me, I guess.
Yeah, possibly. So nobody's here yet. It's about 17 after, so we might want to either do an article or go through the retrospect from.
Yeah, I want to wait on the retrospect until we got some more of the panelists here. But
Till we hopefully have some more panelists. Okay, well.
yeah, so I'll probably go with the start with the article right now.
Okay.
But before I do that, just want to make a quick announcement. I'll announce this a little bit later too when we have more people in as well. So tomorrow, and I was telling you this before the show, Rick. So tomorrow night, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a overview. Tomorrow's show. I'm going to dedicate to doing an overview of Canadian comic history. For those who are interested in that, I want to come.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit based on JR's request.
Yeah,
from the audience.
Yeah,
oh, that's cool.
And we'll make that announcement again, especially when he comes in. So.
Well, if he doesn't come in tonight, I will try to remember to announce it tomorrow on my show, so he knows.
Yep.
If he comes into my show tomorrow.
All right. So yeah. So anyways, if I can just get my head out of the clouds.
Yeah.
All right. So there we go. So Jewish creators shaped the comic industry, and modern wokesters tore it apart. Article by Avi Green, published July 20th, which was a week ago Saturday. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to actually do this article, only because it actually ended up being a little bit shorter than I would have liked. It didn't seem like Avi really went into as much detail. But I still think there's stuff we can talk about it from it anyways.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's him or one of the other ones. Unfortunately, a lot of times that there's the back and forth of the comment on Twitter or whatever. So that ends up usually making things longer. But, this is just a story in itself. So that might be what's making it a little bit shorter, if I remember correctly.
So this is an opinion piece right here. And I guess that might be Siegel and Schuster right there, in fact.
Yeah.
Picture of them. All right, so this is Avi talking now. Jewish Unpacked told the history of how Jewish American industrialists and creators originally shaped the comics medium in the Golden Age. But of course, without getting into any deeper look at how many famous classics with Jewish creators have since been tarnished by woke ideologues, it says about Stan Lee. Now, Stan Lee, he shortened his name to Lee, but I think his
Yeah, he
his
was
actual last name.
Stanley something. I forget what
Lieber. It
that.
was Lieber, I believe.
Yeah,
So now here's what the article he's quoting from it said here. Raised in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood in the Bronx, Lee later adopted his pseudonym to avoid anti-Semitism within the comic book industry. Um, as that was a big thing, even heading into the 40s there, you know.
yeah,
And the Bronx, just for those who don't know, the Bronx is a borough in New York
yeah,
City. So, just for those who don't know, Lee's Jewish upbringing is reflected in characters like Spider-Man. He said he wanted to infuse Spider-Man with what he saw as the essence of Jewish values, stating, "quote To me, you can wrap all of Judaism up in one sentence, and that is, in smaller quotes, do not do unto others, unquote, unsmaller quote. All I tried to do in my stories was show that there's some innate goodness in the human condition, unquote. Unlike,
yeah,
unlike what a lot of these woke ideologues believe, where they
yeah.
basically just vilify everybody who's not their own.
Yeah. Um. Oh, I just wish this would have cited where he said this or whatever. I didn't realize that Stanley was Jewish. Myself. Um. Although I can easily see the
Well,
you
you can go to, if you go to the if you go to his YouTube, or not his YouTube, but his wiki page, it points out
yeah,
that what his real name was and all that. So,
yeah.
um,
I know Stan
well,
Lee was.
okay. So in reading this, okay, so the part up here that started Jewish Unpacked right there. That right there is obvious. That's what, if you notice when I do these articles, I usually will make a notation like, okay, like this is where Avi's talking,
Yeah, and I get
and
that. I
and
get
this, and this,
Arby's
this,
not
this is, and the box, this box right here is what he's
the
quoting from the article he's referencing.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just trying to comment on what's being said here, and I would think it would be even more than just that because a lot of this too, well, at least Spider-Man's, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, I guess there's probably spots in the Old Testament that you can take them from, but you could definitely use the New Testament as well to
Well,
back
okay,
that.
well, here's something else to take into consideration too with all this.
Yeah,
You know, I know you're a Christian. I tend to believe more in the Christian, you know,
theology or
yeah, I believe in like
morals.
Christian morality, their moral code, all that kind of thing. Well, think
Yeah,
about this. So, if you really think about it, whereas the comics industry, when it started, because of a lot of the immigration coming to the states from like places like Germany and all that, because to try to get away from the Jewish persecution there.
yeah.
So, as they just pointed out here, how a lot of the Jewish Americans, a lot of their industrialists and comic creators were the ones who helped to kind of format
Yeah, the industry.
the industry.
But I
Okay,
think even if you had,
look at some of the comic creators we have now, right? It's almost like for the most part they're very very secularist. First off,
yeah, yeah.
um,
I was
with
just gonna.
with 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 a lot of, and you do have some who are like, now granted, you did have some Middle Eastern creators back in their day. Like
Yeah,
I think Arthur Pinajan comes to mind back in the golden age there.
yeah.
Um,
But
but
I think even if in the back in the day, if you had Jewish people or if you had quote unquote Christians, I think you would have ended up with a lot of the same type of heroes that resonated with people like Superman, Spider Man, all those guys. You know,
yeah,
well, Spider Man didn't come along till the '60s. Most of Marvel's main lineup didn't come along till the
yeah,
'60s.
but a lot of what's going on right now, and what I think
Yeah,
a lot of this article is reflecting, is a very age old, is a very age old uh, rivalry or hatred going on there. Because if you think about it,
yeah,
what if you think about it, what is at the root of all this, right?
yeah,
What is at the root of what a lot of these woke people are trying to do, particularly, um,
yeah,
it's almost kind of a microcosm of what goes back to Isaac and Ishmael,
yeah.
right?
No, yeah. The only other thing that I'm not sure about here is what this article is saying. The reason for him changing his name. Lots of people go under pseudonyms or pen names, so he could have done it, I guess.
Like are you wondering why he felt the need to go under a pen name while there are other Jewish creators like let's say Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster who didn't?
Yeah, like did he do it because of that? And we know, although Stanley did it years later than them, because when he did stuff, because like I said, most of his stuff. Well, I'm not sure whether in the 40s when he was doing inking and all that, whether he would have went by Stanley or whether it would have been um because he didn't start creating characters, I think, till like the 60s
Well,
or major
well, the thing
characters.
was is that New York City has always been considered kind of a hodgepodge of because that's where a lot of
Yeah,
that's how
yeah,
that's how a
uh,
lot of the boroughs developed.
yeah,
You'd have even in Harlem you have the one part of Harlem where a lot of the African Americans would be, and you'd have
yeah,
Spanish Harlem where a lot of the Puerto Ricans would be. You know,
yeah. I guess I
so
just can't really see him having to change his name because of that reason or do a pseudonym. But I can't say for sure one way or another. It just seems
let's see.
suspicious to me.
Well, let's see. I'm gonna look over. Well, I'm
See
sure
whether
that.
you can find out on Wikipedia.
Yep.
And
Because
that might be where they're getting the source from too. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to trust Wikipedia, as you would think from something like this.
yeah,
You can't. No.
I'm just kind of briefly looking to see if I can find the. Let's see. Um. Yeah.
And in some ways it matters. In some ways it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean,
He did use a pseudonym, and that's what he became mainly known by. So
right. Okay, I'm just trying to see if there's
skim the
any.
article to see whether you can figure any of this stuff out. Catch a
Well,
keyword
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to see if there's any. Um.
thing that says why he went by that pseudonym, changed it,
Yeah.
didn't go by his
I
real name.
mean, they're talking about a lot of the stuff that happened later in his life, like some of the legal issues he ran into, like intellectual property issues, sexual
I-
harassment allegations.
Is there something on early career
Not as much. Let's see, early life. Um, but it doesn't necessarily mention. Let's see.
about his name?
Yeah.
Okay, well maybe it's
Well,
somewhere else.
he apparently had some Romanian origins. So
Yeah. Well, he could have been Jewish from Romania.
yeah.
Obviously, he wouldn't be Jewish from Israel because Israel was not a nation. Well, in 1940s, you know, and I think he was born in the States. I could be wrong.
um, Let's see, early. Yeah, but nothing here
About his name change.
explaining why he may have felt the need to.
Yeah.
Let me
So
go
we're
back up to the very top because maybe I missed something there. Let's see.
yeah. So obviously, we're probably not going to find out right now. And like I said, it's not a biggie. It's just to me, I
It's
find it
like
pos.
I'm guessing your thought process on it is why did he feel the need to change his name to avoid anti-Semitism? Yet there were other Jewish.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I think they even said Will Eisner was also Jewish.
yeah. Well, well, actually, my thought process is more: did he change it to avoid anti-Semitism, or did he just do it for another reason? And they're just saying it's anti-Semitism, You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, they're probably presuming it because anti-Semitism was probably a bit more rampant back in those time periods. It's like
Yeah,
there were certain stereotypes about Jewish people because of their frugality. You know,
yeah.
um, so
Most people couldn't care. I think reading a comic book, but
yeah,
what's in a name?
yeah. I know of very few people who would just not read a book just simply because of an author's name.
Yeah, because you don't really.
Unless the author has a history of doing stuff like what a lot of these
More
ideologues
recent,
have been
more
doing.
modern day ones too.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
and then it's not because of their name; it's because of what they've done.
right, exactly. So, anyways, um, we move on to the next part of the article here, and this is Avi speaking again. Regrettably, even modern Jewish industrialists don't respect any of that, and anti-Semitism is still a massive problem everywhere. Proving efforts to combat it through even comicdom have been a failure. Joe Quesada and Bill Gemus certainly did unto Lee and others quite an injustice when they set in motion the dissolving of the Spider marriage,
Okay,
which
now
will,
do they mean Stanley? Because I don't think Stanley got them married.
um,
I don't think he was in charge when they got married. Maybe he was in
yeah,
charge, but he
well,
wasn't the
as far as
the
as
writer
far
or
as I know,
anything on it.
I think he was because they got married in the 80s. He was still the guy at Marvel.
Yeah, but he's not the writer or anything like that of the book. Yeah, he would have quote unquote final say of anything. So yeah, he approved of it, but
Yeah, he may not have been the one to actually write it, but he would have naturally approved it because
yeah,
The Jewish people are also big on traditional family values.
yeah. But my thing is, yeah, he would have approved it, but I don't think like it was his idea. Yeah, made it. Put it. He might have been the one to put Mary Jane in the picture for Peter. He might have still been writing Spider-Man at that point. I'm not even 100% sure. You know, whether he came up with the character of Mary Jane or whether somebody else did. But obviously, he approved and he really liked the idea of Mary Jane. That I can see, but I'm not sure whether. And it's probably too much to go looking for this stuff. So I wouldn't bother at this point going looking. It's just my thoughts, commentary on
I
the.
mean, I get kind of what you're saying about the idea that maybe he didn't, but he obviously him coming from a Jewish background, he would have
Yeah,
been for traditional family values. So
yeah,
even if he was not the brainchild per se of Spider-Man getting married and marrying
Mary Jane.
yeah, Mary Jane and all that.
He, as
He,
editor in chief, president, or however you
he
want to
would have
say it
been
was.
he would have been approving it, and
Yeah, he would have been informed and wouldn't obviously he wasn't against it. Otherwise, he would have said, "No, you can't do that."
right. He probably
But there's lots of other characters in Marvel that even at the time that he didn't have married, like Daredevil, Iron Man, So
yeah.
you know, it's not necessarily. Yeah, I get where you're coming from with for the family values, but depending on the character, yeah, it was something to go. They all, have, of course, had romantic interests, and all that. And of course, I think he probably was one for Sue and Richard Reed to be married, Reed Richards,
Yeah.
you know, which happened beforehand. But yeah,
Mhm.
they messed with Joe Casada. But
But I think the bottom line is, I think the bottom line in that statement there, Rick,
yeah,
is that, you know, the current, and I think that's the point they were making in the article here too, is
yeah,
that the current crop of editors there have
yeah,
basically taken Marvel in a
yeah,
direction that is totally anti what those who built the
started it.
company on went with. Okay, they
Yeah,
basically, it's like they basically took, you know they took a lot of what guys like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, they took a lot of what these guys did,
yeah,
balled it up,
and have
balled it up
crapped
in
on
their
it.
hand, and then wiped their butt with it.
Yeah.
So I mean,
But I don't think they're trying to. Somebody's, I think, trying to put this as being anti-Semitism. I don't think it has to do with any anti-Semitism. I think it just has to be with being idiots, jerks. And Metals here and said says something. Stan also didn't have much of a positive directive on characters what they should do. He was more directive on the negative, what they can't do.
hmm, yeah, yeah, but I think,
Yeah,
yeah, and Metal, of course, if you want to join us, I know I sent you the link earlier, so when you can, go ahead and jump in when you have a moment there. Um, anyways, yeah, when they set in motion dissolving, which will likely never be mended, and that doesn't matter to these historians. You
yeah.
know, um, well,
Well,
yeah, okay, yeah, it's funny though. It's funny though because we're focusing on Lee here, but there's one key aspect that we kind of got lost in translation there. Let me
yeah,
read this line one more time, okay?
yeah.
Joe
Okay.
Quesada and Bill Jemas certainly did unto Lee and others quite an injustice when they set in motion the dissolving of the spider marriage. So again, it goes back to the statement I just made a few minutes ago. The idea of what these guys did in terms of how they built the company, what values they chose to embrace when they built the company and put that into the
Yeah,
characters they created.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, okay. We know that. Okay, Lee may not have created Mary Jane. He may not have orchestrated the marriage, but he would have most definitely been behind it because as being somebody who was raised in the Jewish faith and Jewish community, family is a big thing. You
yeah.
know,
Well,
family is a big thing, and
yeah.
well,
Also, it was a little bit, for lack, I hate using it, term evolution of the character that gets the character progressing, where they've sent Spider-Man back into the continuous thing of, oh, girlfriend after girlfriend after girlfriend after girlfriend, just never settling down, or nothing's ever
wrapping up.
working out for Spider-Man.
If
And it's
you
part
think
of the
about,
Parker
if
luck.
you really think about it, chance, like had they not decided to kill her off initially,
Who?
uh, Gwen Stacy,
Oh yeah,
I could have seen them possibly, having Peter marry Gwen.
yeah,
From everything I heard, they were pretty solid. I was a pretty solid relationship too. I had probably a
yeah.
solid
I
relationship. I
think
was
it was
working
actually
towards
Stan that
a
didn't want
possible
that to.
marriage there.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think it was actually Stan that didn't want that. That's why that didn't happen. I could be wrong though.
yeah, well,
I think I think I might have heard something along that lines, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. Anyways, I guess on to the next paragraph to talk about for 20 minutes.
Yeah. The history article. Okay, so this is Avi speaking again. The history article also brings up Art Spiegelman's Moss or Mouse. I think that's German right there.
Yeah.
So this is from the article that Avi is citing. Recently, the book has been at the center of controversy as it was banned by Tennessee School Board last year for having, quote, rough, objectionable language, unquote. Banning Mouse, quote unquote, only proves how comic books and graphic novels are far from mere entertainment. They are powerful expressions of history, identity, and human resilience. They challenge societal norms and give voice to narratives that might otherwise remain silent.
Nowadays, I don't think so.
You don't think so nowadays?
Oh yeah, almost anybody and everybody can get on the internet and spout their whatever they want. About whatever narrative or whatever.
Yeah.
Either YouTube or whatever. There's very little repercussions unless you're going against the narrative that the powers that be want.
Right.
Look how many people are shut down when they go against certain narratives.
Yeah, the whole cancel culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, getting back to the finishing up the art, and this is why I said it was so short here. The problem is left-wing Spiegelman himself doesn't seem to be protesting altruistically, and no mention made whether Will Eisner's graphic novels could fall victim to the same problem. So what's being accomplished if nobody's willing to address the meatier issues involved? That's why, again, this article is just plain unsatisfying and hard to believe the writer really cares.
Yeah.
Now,
go ahead.
Now, the thing is, I felt that Avi's article, but maybe then again, maybe because the source article he was going from was kind of weak as well. Maybe that's why this article seems weak. It doesn't seem like,
And what was the title of this article again?
Jewish creators shaped the comic industries and modern wokesters tore it apart.
Yeah, well, he doesn't really get bait with just this article, and he doesn't really do much on that whole topic.
Right. That good point there, Rick. That's kind of another thing that kind of. Granted, I may not
there's what
it, but I think you just articulated that. It's like.
It's only I think Stan that's mentioned. Very few other Jewish creators are mentioned.
Yeah, it's very minimalist here. You don't, and I think the other thing that's disappointing about me because you probably heard RJ mention this himself. Avi normally is very detailed in his articles.
Yeah.
Avi, and you know this because we've read a few of Avi's articles.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you which articles are his or which aren't from what we've read, but I do know that we've read a few.
But his articles usually are meatier than this. It would have been interesting if he had gone into a little bit more depth at just how this was all going down. Granted, now maybe he felt he didn't need to because we all could see how it's going down.
Yeah, but see, he only tore. They talked about the whole thing about Spider-Man's marriage to Mary Jane, and that's about the only main thing that comes up in that other article. So it's like, how can you say, yeah, they're tearing it all down? The Jewish creators created it and they're tearing it all down. Now, I might agree with the sentiment, possibly, but there's not enough, even with the other article, to prove that hypothesis of the title. Because you mentioned one, maybe
Avi doesn't go into as much detail as he has with other articles in the past, and That's kind of the thing that was just for me when I covered that article this past week. That was the disappointing part. I
Yeah.
do need I oh we got metal here. Hey
Hey,
metal.
Metal.
Hello, hello.
So, any thoughts on the article, Metal? Besides a little bit that you said in the thing, but that was more
Well, after
commentary
I
on what
said
we
what
were
I
saying.
said, I had to go and wash dishes, so I only just got back.
Oh, okay.
So you didn't hear
Much of the article.
Well, I had the stream up since you guys started, but like I was cooking,
In and
eating,
out
and cleaning
of
that
the room.
entire time. So
yeah. Well, that article was the one I kind of mentioned I think the other day where Avi was the it was Jewish. Basically, the idea was that what he was trying to get at was how Jewish industrialists and comic creators helped to build the comic industry back in the golden age, and how the modern wokesters are tearing it apart now. The only problem that Rick and I were just discussing is that normally Avi does a good job in going into detail when he does his articles, but this one he did not really go into a lot of detail in terms of like really, he didn't really expound upon the title there of the article, and that was
that's
the
probably because
that
he
was,
only had like a loose idea and didn't actually know where he was going with it.
Yeah. Well, and the article that he drew from to say about it really didn't even, I think, say much of that or anything to what the article was named. So it's like,
yeah.
I think the title is a bit of a stretch.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I was somewhat disappointed in it because Avi's normally more of a detail. I was looking forward to really dissecting it, and there wasn't really much to dissect. Um,
Heck, the most that we talked about was Stan and the
well,
comments
yeah,
made
well,
about
yeah,
Stan.
because a couple of things that we got into discussion was one. Rick was wondering why Stan Lee felt the need to change his name to avoid anti-Semitism when
Or
others
whether that
creators
was the
didn't.
reason at all.
You know,
I've
Oh
uh,
seen
yeah, both
from
of them did it. I actually don't believe it was what you would later call anti-Semitism, though. I do believe it was for one of the same reasons many migrant families and stuff like that ended up changing their name, even though his family had been here longer. And it was specifically because Anglicanized names did better in industries,
so it
right?
wasn't due to anti-Semitism. He just wanted a better,
Well, it
profit
was
margin.
I don't like most of these words, but you could say a general xenophobia, right?
Yeah.
I actually have a friend, right, it's still this way to some degree, who has a stage name where his last name is changed because he has a Jewish last name.
Yeah. But
And part of it
sometimes
too
people,
is a lot of these names are just harder to say. His not so much, like Liebert is not hard to say, but a lot of them are harder to say. They don't do well, especially if you're on radio or TV or anything like that. I know Kirby was the same. He was
particularly
Kurtzberg.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
particularly those, those Jewish individuals who are born in like Eastern
yeah.
Europe
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah. But
Like,
at that point, it can be anybody with a last name that's hard to say. Like you could have
Well,
somebody
yeah,
from
a
Africa.
lot of immigrants were having this problem. And even like you could take my family for example, right? My last name is McGrath, which is a slightly more Anglicanized version of an Irish name.
Yeah.
That the spelling of it has changed the pronunciation because back in Ireland it was pronounced McCraw, but it has a lot more letters than that, and that confuses a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it was happening to everybody.
Yeah. Or you're like a friend of ours, Chris Tomulovich.
Yeah.
You know, if he went into something just other than comics, he might want to
But
change his name.
if you look at the timeline, I don't believe in his case it was specifically what we've come to know as anti-Semitism,
Yeah.
because in the States that really wasn't on the rise at the time that he changed it. That wouldn't happen until almost a decade or so later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what half my point was. Did he change
Yeah.
it because of anti-Semitism, or was it another reason?
No,
Because
he was
I'm
going in
more
the
leaning
publishing
towards
industry.
another reason.
And I think it's because he was in the publishing industry.
Yeah.
Both him and Kirby did it, you know. And they weren't the only ones. There were other people like them too that weren't just Jewish, though. It was mostly Jewish people because they had culturally a very strong work ethic. So a lot of them rose to the top of any industry that they were.
Yeah, which of course
Yeah.
sometimes their work ethic and like things like their frugality would get them a very negative stereotype.
Yeah.
You know.
Which
Well, not
eventually
their
led
work ethic,
to
but
a
their
lot of
frugality.
anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
work
almost
ethic,
every, although the work ethic more becomes, I think, a negative because most people hate it when the guy that works really hard, and they despise him because they don't want to work hard. So it's like, will you stop working hard? You're making us all look bad.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
they've a lot of the same stereotypes any in-group gets, like any smaller collective, I guess we called Despera, where they tend to collect together, right? You have the same connotations towards Asian people now, for the most part, because they tend to stay in their collective. So you'll get like a little China, you'll get like a little Vietnam area or whatever. And a lot of them have this like very strong culture that they'll instill in their children. And when they do start to raise up in positions and stuff, they'll start taking family members as well, and there's like this internal nepotism, and you see like the exact same behavior, and it's no different than what anybody would do. But yeah, if you're in that situation where you feel cheated, whether you were or not, you could see why negative stereotypes would end up being fostered.
Yeah.
And then of course you kind of chimed in already on the second thing that we're really discussing about there, which is that one line where they talked about how Joe Quesada and Bill Jemas had started to dissolve the Spider marriage, and they said, do unto Lee and others quite an injustice.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I do have to say we'd have to focus on the others, because especially when it comes to the trajectory of Spider-Man, Stan didn't really have that much to do with it, right? Like I said, he has more of his directives were more negative than positive, where he didn't really tell writers, especially because he gave Ditko a lot of freedom in the early days. He didn't really tell writers what they had to do with the character or what direction the character had to go. It was more of like, you can't do these things with the characters because if you cross these lines, that character is no longer that character anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but still, as an editor, he still would have had somewhat of a say as to whether or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but if they haven't crossed the line, then he's
and like. But I think what the gist of the article was here was a lot of the values and the mores that a lot of these original comic creators put into the comic. Granted, a lot of them were Jewish, but as even I pointed out, there was at least one who was non-Jewish, who I think might have actually been Middle Eastern, Arthur Pinajan. But a lot of them were Jewish. They put a lot of their ideology and their their values and their mores into it.
Yeah, they put a Judeo-Christian
now you have
value
an entire editorial staff that is just going. It's basically, as I mentioned earlier, it's like they took everything that Lee, Ditko, Kirby, Siegel, Schuster, Kane. It's like they took a lot of what these people did, balled it up into a little piece of paper, and wiped their what's with it.
Well, there was an interesting thought because Rick mentioned something about how it was Stan who was kind of against Gwen and Peter marrying. I did hear that before I ran off to do the dishes, and I do believe that is the case, and I believe Stan is widely against heroes marrying because of his Jewish values, right? And one of the reasons is comic book stories are so volatile that you never know if characters are going to stay together long term. And if a hero doesn't actually get married, you can't worry about a writer divorcing them later down the road when you no longer have control.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. But also, I would also think the whole idea of like what a lot of people would worry about with Superman, for example, with Lois Lane, the proverbial damsel in distress, trope. Um,
Yeah, but see,
where
Lois was a strong
that
woman too.
aspect would probably play, because if people knew who the character was, of like, and knew, oh, we can get, like, that's exactly what happened with Gwen, right? People found out that Gwen was special to Spider-Man. She was killed off, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
I mean
true.
that is why she ended up in that trouble, but um, it is a big problem where if you get married, they become even bigger target. Uh, but or if you go steady with somebody, they become a bigger target. Because somebody may not. If you just have like a one-off girlfriend, you go on a few dates. Sometimes somebody probably want to just attack them because they don't even know how much that person even means to you, right? If you're
Yeah,
steady with somebody, that's when it actually becomes a target, like
yeah.
Gwen.
Well, yeah, even Lois at times. But then
Yeah.
again, Lois got herself in a lot of her own jams just by being Lois.
Well, I know you guys do know that they actually did devote an entire comic book to Lois, Superman's
Yeah.
girlfriend, Lois Lane. I know you guys know about that one. Now,
Yeah,
when we get into the mid, what I will tell you this, I'll give you guys a little heads up here. Because I've obviously read the synopsis on when we get into the mid 40s in our historical comic retrospect. There was for a short, and this happened in both Superman and Batman, the Batman books. Okay, where in the case of Superman, it was Lois Lane, girl reporter, and then in Batman, The Adventures of Alfred, where they actually give those two side characters, those two supporting characters, kind of their own feature in those
yeah.
books.
Well, I don't think it was the 40s, but they did the same thing with Jimmy Olsen. They gave him his own book.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not talking about a full book. I'm talking about just a feature. Yeah, they got a feature like Lois Lane Girl Report. It was for a few issues there. I think it
Yeah.
was like from 44 to 45 or whatever.
Oh, so
Both
she
of them.
just got a feature in one, but she also got her own book later on too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I gotta step away for a moment, guys. So why don't you guys talk amongst yourselves? Also, before I do go off here, for those who may be in the chat, first off, if you can like and share the stream, if you haven't already, see if we can get some more friendly people in here. Also, if anything we talk about grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and we'll try to answer the questions to the best of our abilities. So, with that, I got to step away for another moment. I'll be right back. Why don't you two talk amongst yourselves for a moment, and then we'll get back. We'll continue.
we can try to do that. I think
We could.
we could, or we could just make it awkward and
Oh,
be
since
silent.
Lois was brought up, right? I haven't been watching that stupid show
Oh,
that's right, but I've been seeing a lot of clips and things from it, right? And I think I realized what the problem was. Right, other than the fact that they clearly don't care about Superman, but I saw a picture of the show's version of Mixia Spitlick, right?
oh, I
And
haven't even seen that. So
he looked like a knockoff version of like the Supreme Kai from Dragon Ball Z. And then it dawned on me, it's like I understand everything now.
they're trying to
Because this
do a manga version of it, but
Yeah, but specifically a lot of the stereotypes of the characters in this show are basically just Dragon Ball Z characters. So when I look at Lois's behavior, even if she does something similar to what Lois would do, like jump out of a building to try to force Clark to reveal himself, which she did in one of the movies, right? She does this not in a way that Lois would. She's not acting like Lois doing
yeah.
it. She's like Bulma or Videl from Dragon Ball. Like that's her personality. She's been replaced with another character doing the same things. She even kind
Okay.
of looks like Videl from Dragon Ball too.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know those, but yeah, I watched the first two
Yeah.
episodes. Uh, I've I don't know whether I'll go and watch the other ones or not. I'm not very impressed by it.
Yeah.
It's if it wasn't Superman, I might watch it.
Yeah, if it was like just original characters,
But it's supposed to be Superman. It's like, God, this
But
is
like
not
her
Superman.
haircut, her spunky attitude, the way she talks to Clark, and even the way Clark is acting, he's acting a little more like adult Gohan when he was the Great Saiyan Man than he's acting like Superman. Like, I feel like the writers of the show really just wanted to write a story about Gohan and Fidel, but the only thing they got access to was Superman. So they just put Gohan and Fidel in Superman and Lois's places.
So I'm guessing you guys are talking about the criticism that's been coming out about
Well, not really
about my adventures with Superman.
I wouldn't say we're
Yeah,
talking
we
about
just
the
brought up
criticism.
Lois, so it
we're
made
just
me think of
talking
it.
about we're just talking about the show in general, not the criticisms.
Yeah. Well, actually,
because Marvel,
there was an article I did cover this last week, but I wasn't sure if I wasn't thinking of covering it tonight.
Yeah.
But if we are talking about it anyways,
no, Metal was just more talking about how it seems to reflect more of Dragon Ball Z, or one of the Dragon Ball Z series.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about it, I can.
The article that they had up on that this last week on Bounding into Comics that I covered, apparently a lot of fans are upset with how they had Lois out Clark's secret identity to her.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but before maybe we will, since we are talking about it anyways, maybe I will go back and cover that article as well here tonight.
I guess we could if you want,
Yeah, no problem with that.
But actually, before we do that, let's do a couple other things, and we'll get back to articles here. First off, Metal, since you did get here, I did give Rick a chance earlier. So if you want to go ahead and do a little intro, share some links, promote anything you're doing right now, go for
it. Yeah, let me grab a very specific link real quick. Let me find it. Yeah, so hey, I'm the Metal. I do everything. That's just what I do. Very, very recently, I returned to, I guess, premium content making. I don't know what you want to call it. It's still free. But I went back to my channel, 12.2 TMTV, and I made a kind of sketch interview video called What I Learned in Horror Movies, which is a series I used to run for quite a while, called What I Learned back in 2015 and 16. And yeah, you can find that here. I think people should go and subscribe to that channel. Since my brother wants to get back into making sketches and stuff, we might actually be doing more of those again. Cool. Also, commissions are open.
I saw that. I haven't watched it yet. I'm not sure whether I'm going to watch it.
Oh, Woody just... Hey, Woody.
Hey, Woody. How are you tonight?
And then there's the link to what Metal was just talking about there. All right. Yep. So now, anything else you'd like to say, Metal, in regards to that before we continue here?
No. Other than I guess slightly explicit language warning. That's about it.
All right. Well, with that, we're gonna before we get back to the articles here. So Rick was my co-host this last Friday when we went over. And Rick, what he's doing great. Yep. Thanks, Rick. All right. We went over comics, of course, that went on sale in November 1939 from Fiction House. We went over. We read Samson from Fantastic Comics Volume 1, Number 2, I believe. The Flame, and we ended up also reading Patio Day from Wonderworld Comics Volume 1, Issue 9, and then Blue Beetle and Zanzibar the Magician from Mystery Men Comics Volume 1, Number 6. So, Rick, you want to give some of your impressions on what we read there? I know you had a few things to say about some of the plot holes. So,
Yeah. Obviously, I almost always find the plot holes, the leaps in logic, or whatever you want to call it. So we had Samson. I found Samson a little bit more Superman esque, I would say, for the time. Like because he was able to leap tall buildings. Well, no, leap up on top of tall buildings, not over. So, I guess that's a little bit of a distinguished thing to say. But oh, and and he was going up against militaries and stuff like that, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember everything about that story. It was definitely unique. Of course, he was just in a loincloth, if you will. Well, maybe, or
Well,
furred underwear.
a couple of interesting little side notes, of course. In the Fox feature syndicate universe, that Samson is a descendant of the biblical Samson. So
Yeah,
that's one of the points I made about it.
yeah,
Um, and also, much like many of the comics of that time period, going back to what we were talking about with the Jewish creators and all that, and their influences and stuff like that. Kind of the idea of trying to get Americans more wanting to get involved in the war in Europe, where in this case, so they would be making up names
yeah,
of countries. Um,
yeah. That's something I was gonna say too about. I was thinking earlier is that the comics seem to be showing a little bit more of characters are going against war type people. Not that we haven't had that a little bit before, but it seems to be beginning to get more prevalent, at
mhm.
least for the comics that aren't DC or Marvel, I would say. Or
Well, yeah, well. Remember too here. This is
yeah,
November 1939. We're talking about. So Europe is already, there's a couple of months into the war in Europe.
yeah,
America's still a couple of years away. But before we continue on, let me get caught up on some of these things here.
chat.
So nice to see the medal becoming a regularish guest. Hmm. And then I guess medal replied with an elbow cough. And Woody said, laugh aloud. It will take me a lot of time to unwrap and watch that video you pointed at, dude.
Yeah.
All right.
And
So,
also, he had said earlier, doing great. Thanks, Rick.
mhm. All right. So continue on, Rick.
Yeah. So, yeah, the war effort. What was I saying? I was saying something with the war stuff. Oh, I know what you're going to say. Well, the war hasn't been going on much. Didn't we find out that the war was either started in November or December of 1939?
I think it was
Well,
more like September or October. It was probably a month or two into the war, though, at this point.
yeah, well, it depends on when these comics were released throughout the month, whether it started.
Okay, November is the on sale date.
Yeah,
The
so it
cover
would have been.
date was January 1940, but the on sale date was November. So, um,
Oh, so you're saying these would have been made in November, but put out for people to buy in January? The fall.
okay, the on sale date was November. The cover date was January of 1940. From what RJ has usually told me, the cover date is kind of like the expiration date. It's like it's the sell by date. That's what the cover date represents usually, according to what RJ told me.
Okay, I don't
So
quite get that
the
part.
actual on sale date was November. So they would have most likely been writing up in like September and October.
Yeah.
So
So
around the
there would
time.
have been rumblings of a war, possibly, but it hadn't started yet when they wrote it.
Mhm.
But it's slowly becoming more prevalent as we go on. Obviously, as I was putting out a little bit. Um, I can't think of everything for Samson, but then we, of course, did move on to the Flame, which was pretty good. Trying to think about what he did. He was going against some pirates, right?
Yeah, I think. Let's see.
Some pirateers or whatever they were. Oh no, the subs. They were blowing up. Using a sub and blowing up ships or whatever for whatever reason. I'm not sure whether it said why or not. Probably did.
That might have been a Patio Day story.
Oh yeah, I'm confusing it with Patio Day.
Yeah.
I know they were all fairly good stories. Like a couple of them had more leaps in logic than others. It's an interesting that we read Blue Beetle at this point because Blue Beetle does release in theaters in about 12 days. So that's
Yeah. But this is the original Blue Beetle Dan Garrett we were looking at. This is even before. I mean, they did mention a story that he was already wearing the chainmail as part of his outfit, even though he hadn't gone to the full superhero garb yet. I think he was still using it within a business suit.
Yeah. Trying to think. They were good stories, but I guess nothing is really standing out. Anything about any of them, I'm
We
not
did
sure
kind of go through them kind of quicker than usual too. We didn't.
Yeah.
We just didn't. In fact, if you remember, I mean, I had to add the Patio Day story just simply because of the fact,
Yeah.
we were running short on time because
we didn't. We didn't do a lot of commentary on them. Yeah, there was a couple spots where I found a little bit of leap in logic or plot hole. So, like I said, they were decent stories, especially for the time and all that. I know I enjoyed them all. Unfortunately, I guess they just weren't memorable.
All right.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I mean, not every story in a continuity is going to be wham bam thank you ma'am. Right?
Yeah.
And there are going to be some that are just going to
be. Actually, I think that's more what they end up being. Wham bam thank you ma'am, not memorable.
Yeah.
You're in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Woody says pressure cooker has been turned off. If I don't respond here in the room for a while, call an EMT.
All right. So, anyways, all right. Well, I guess that's enough of that.
Sorry, I didn't have much to say there.
Yeah. Well, Metal, you'll be joining me this Friday when we go over Silver Streak Volume 1, Number 2 from Lev Gleason. And I know you said you hadn't really heard too much about Lev Gleason before. I mean, the last time I read Lev Gleason, RJ was with me. Actually, one of the other heroes, I guess, according to RJ, and I've seen this too, the one character that they were known for, they had a character called Daredevil that was pretty popular back in the golden age. This is not the Matt Murdock Marvel Daredevil. It's kind of funny.
No, this is the Jack Binder Daredevil.
Huh?
This is the Jack Binder Daredevil.
Yeah. But aside from that, they had a couple other characters that would also have, that would have names that would be used by Marvel as well. The Claw and Wasp, which will be two of the features we'll be covering. So, and I know when I was talking to you about it yesterday, on the Vomitorium, or when I mentioned, I know you were telling Marsupi you're going to be excited, to be learning a little bit more about this, which is a good thing because that's one of the other things I love about doing this too, is getting people interested in those older comics too, as another alternative to what's going on. So what are you saying? Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And that was Suffragette City from David Bowie, dude. I didn't know that. I've heard
Yeah,
people say it over the years. I never fully knew. Like
yeah,
I knew it had a more of a mature connotation to it. I did get that, but other than that,
yeah, yeah. I didn't know where it came from myself. I just know the term and what usually people mean by it.
yeah,
Oh, I'm the only David Bowie enjoyer here. Okay.
Yep, apparently.
yeah.
I've heard the name, but uh,
He's a
I
he's a
might have even heard
he's
some
a
of his
rock star.
music, but I
Known
wouldn't be able
for a
to.
lot of his music in the 70s and 80s, I believe.
He went through a lot of different phases where he'd even like change his stage name and basically his entire identity during the different phases. His music would even skip genre depending on what phase he was in. But these days, I think most people end up knowing him because he played the Goblin King in The Labyrinth.
Yeah, I know he did do some acting quite a bit over the years too. So, um, all right. So, wow, we're already past the hour mark, so that's good. We're making good
Yeah,
time here.
we finished. We
Um,
pretty much finished the. We were at the hour mark, basically at the end of the conversation from the the first article.
all right, and just as a reminder, of course, if you guys haven't already, if you could help us out by liking, sharing the stream, seeing if we can get some more friendly people here, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. Let's see. Woody, what are you saying? It probably had a source before that, but I was a teenager listening to rock and roll back, and it
I
was
think he
kind
means back
of
then.
an ad lib going into a chorus reprise. And then Woody adds after that. That was back before we realized he was gay fish. I never thought David. I granted I knew like a lot of people in the '80s he would wear makeup, but I never thought. I mean, I knew Boy George. I mean, it was revealed eventually Boy George was gay.
Yeah, he may not be. Could he mean gay-ish, not gay fish?
So the thing about
Not that
Bowie
that would mean
is
different.
he was definitely bi. He had a very, very loose sexuality that he didn't like people to describe. But he did have a weakness for both sexes.
You talk about him like he's dead. I don't think David Bowie's dead.
Yes, he passed away.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. Black Star was his last album. It almost seemed like a goodbye letter, like he knew he was passing away. It was several years ago.
Because I didn't hear that he died, but let me check that.
Yeah, it was 2016.
Oh yeah, 26. Yeah, I see it right here. So 69. That
Yeah.
would have made him about 2 days after his 69th birthday.
Yeah. Well, that's just like the actor Pee Wee Herman died last week or this
Yeah.
week, whatever.
Yeah, they said here he died of liver cancer. He'd been diagnosed 18 months earlier, but had not made his condition public. All right. So, all right. I didn't realize he passed away, so I hadn't heard too much about it. But
Yeah, it's been a little while now. It was a pretty sad day for a lot of us because he was very, very influential as a musician.
And when he says fish, so he meant gay fish, not gay-ish.
yeah. All right. So let's see.
That
Well,
just means he
since
liked
we
fish
were
sticks.
all right. So unless there's anything else you guys want to bring up, I guess we can go back to the articles. I guess we'll go check out that Superman article I was talking about. Unless you guys had something else.
Well, I can confirm that Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am predates the song by David Bowie by quite a bit. In fact, the earliest use we could see of it was back in 1919.
Oh, wow.
Actually, if I also remember correctly, I think during his wrestling career, I think Danny Doring actually named one of his moves "Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am," one of his finishing moves.
Okay, now now Woody says ish. So is it gay-ish or gay fish? Or is it
Both.
fishish?
Let me just check something here.
Woody
And
seeming a
just
bit
in case you guys
fishy
don't know
here.
who Danny Doring is, Danny Doring was a wrestler in ECW. He would often team with Amish Roadkill there. They're actually a pretty good team. They just never really got too high up on the card. So yeah, his finish one of his finisher moves he actually called "Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am." It was a DDT, a double underhook DDT, or sometimes called a butterfly DDT. Basically,
Sorry, I read it wrong. The person who wrote it was born in 1919. The earliest use was in 1950.
Oh,
which would have made the person about 31 when he used it in the song. So, let's see. Woody said he did a lot of good things back then. That's all I can say. I don't remember much else except for the price of drugs.
That's funny.
All right. So, anyways, why don't we go ahead and get to another article here? We were talking about Superman earlier, so we might as well go ahead and take a look at that article, the one I was just mentioning to you guys.
we're gonna look at what we hope is a super article.
Well, I don't think it would be. Basically, so here's what it has to say. Let me just make sure. Yeah, you have it up there. Fans furious over Lois Lane's rude outing of Clark Kent in My Adventures with Superman. Article by Nerdigans Inc., published back on the 31st, television. So, fans are furious over the latest episode of DC's anime-inspired romantic comedy, My Adventures with Superman, where Lois Lane guilt-tripped Clark Kent to coming clean about his superhero identity.
You know what? I could actually sort of see Lois doing that. She's done it several
She
times.
has.
Actually, that's one of the points they make in this article, too, that she's done that before. My Adventures with Superman follows the Earth. And just so you guys know, the premiere of it's usually on Thursday nights on Adult Swim, following up with a rebroadcast Fridays on Max. And they, of course, re-air it on the Toonami block on Saturday night, Sunday morning. So, just so you know, just in the, granted, I doubt anybody here who wants to actually see it, because I myself, I couldn't get past the first 5 minutes. So, but
I got past the first 5 minutes. I got through 2 episodes, and
okay.
if it came on, I'd probably watch it, but I'm not sure whether I want to go through the hassle of downloading it to watch it.
or just one of those things where you'd want to actually make time to watch it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you happen to be flipping through the channels, you see it, yeah, you'll watch it, but otherwise, you're probably not going to go out of your way to watch it.
Yeah, it's like, but something like, say, Smallville, I went out of my way to watch it.
Yeah. All right. So, anyways, My Adventures with Superman follows the early days of Clark's life in Metropolis as he attempts to balance his secret identity, with his developing career as an investigative reporter alongside his roommate colleague Jimmy Olsen and Lois. Again, just the whole thing of how
which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, they aged up Jimmy to where he's pretty much the same age as them. They kind of demoted Lois and Clark to interns when they were always reporters right from the
yeah. Well, Lois was a reporter there before Clark even got there, and had been there for a while because she had worked her way up to like some sort of senior position.
She's like a senior reporter.
Clark does come in, and he's got to prove himself, and he proves himself pretty quick, and ends up becoming quickly a senior reporter.
Well, it's pretty easy to prove yourself when you're always at the scene.
Yeah, well,
Well, that was one of the appeals about that too, is that obviously he could, because he was the one he was writing about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he has to write it in such a way
If
that
you guys
is
remember the old
Clark.
Fleischer cartoons and a lot of that, and the '50s Superman series, live action series. So, anyways, previous episodes had seen Lois connecting the dots and figuring out that Clark was Superman at the end of My Adventures of Superman's 4th episode. Let's go to Ivo Tower, you say, quote unquote, leading up to the controversial moment when she guilt trips Clark into revealing his identity.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, okay. She tries to guilt trip him, like as we said earlier. Quickly, this has been done before, and Clark never falls for it.
Yeah.
He comes up with a way to, fluff her off.
Yeah. Sharing that may be the contention here. Maybe they just let it go this time. Again,
Yeah, I mean, I like the one in the movie. I think it was originally a deleted scene, but it's like in the extended version of like the second Superman where she jumps out the window. So she's doing like a very similar scene, falling from a building, and he like rushes down at super speed, blows into the air to slow her fall, and then pulls out the canopy, and then rushes back up before she can actually see anything, and is just looking out the window like, "Why did you do that?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Or it was done on Lois and Clark several times. It's been done in the comics. I think it's been done a couple times in the George Reeves Superman.
sharing a clip from the show's 5th episode titled, in smaller quotes, "You will believe a man can lie," unsmaller quote, at Buggy, underscore Con, simply wrote, quote, "Yeah, I'm with Clark on this one. Lois, you crazy." Unquote.
Yeah, well, we already knew that.
Yeah, they made her more crazy here, right? Instead of thanking Clark for rescuing her, Lois proceeds to accuse him of lying to her.
Oh, well, geez, doesn't that sound like somebody?
Yeah, but also
Tila from He-Man?
there might have been a good reason that he didn't want her or anybody else to know his secret identity, because when they know their secret identity, they become more of a liability.
Yeah.
Now, I always found this logic stupid. Always. I've always found that line of logic stupid, that when they know your secret identity, they become a liability. Because if anything, it's the other way around, right? Because if somebody's in a relationship with someone and they don't know that they're a superhero, they're still a liability. Like a villain's still going to find out that you're in a relationship with the person. If anything, now they can't even properly understand why bad things are happening to them because they don't know that like their boyfriend is a superhero or something. Like not knowing, it doesn't. I guess there's that form
of
be
able to be aware of stuff that's might happen to them.
Yeah, but it's still gonna happen to you, right? Like if Lex Luthor knew that you were dating somebody, it's not like, oh, but she doesn't know that he's Superman, so I'm not gonna go after her. It's like, no, that is already a liability for Superman. Why wouldn't I go after her? I've always found a really dumb line of logic. The only defense there is possibly legal, like court defenses, but then that would assume that the law knows that you're dating Superman and that they're the same person. And then if you got married, honestly, they couldn't hold it against you anyway because of, the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah. But no, what I more meant, does it sound like somebody is, I was thinking Tila in Kevin Smith He-Man. When she finds out Adam is Prince Adam is He-Man.
Well, I didn't
you
watch
lied
that,
to me
so
and
I
get all
don't
pissed
know
off.
exactly what you're talking about. But
pardon? What was that?
I said I didn't watch that, so I don't know as much what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure whether Metal's seen it, but there was a whole bunch of things that went on about that, And also the other thing that I'd say, like, lady, I just met you a couple months ago. Yeah, and we were thrown together. What makes me think I want to tell you my deepest, darkest secret?
Yeah.
Maybe not dark, but get what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like,
Claiming, quote, a secret is another type of lie, unquote, as Man of Steel explains that he was afraid she would make the secret identity public.
yeah. So, like, I don't know you well enough to trust you yet with something this big.
Despite Lois previously lying to Clark when they first met and denying she would publish Clark's secrets, she concludes the scene by continuing to paint herself as the victim. Classic SJW, right?
Yeah.
They get caught doing something wrong, and no, that's not my fault. No, I'm the victim here. All right, breaking up with him for not disclosing his secret.
Okay, so they're going out at this point. Okay, yeah, but still, it's about how much do you trust the person? You've only been going out like a couple weeks or whatever, right? Or a couple months at best.
Depending upon how time flies, like we may be seeing, the episodes may be coming out a week at a time, but it could be passing more like a month or two at a time within their continuity.
Yeah, I know by the end of episode 2 they weren't dating, so this is like 3 episodes later. So I don't know what the timeline is like for sure.
The fans were furious, claiming Lois Lane outing of Superman was an example of the infamous, quote, omission is still a lie, unquote, trope, which has become synonymous with Amber in Invincible and Tila in Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe Revelation.
Well, I knew what Rick was talking about, but it's because of what he's talking about is why I didn't watch Masters of the Universe. Yeah. And specifically because Marsupio was talking about it. He watched the whole thing for some reason. Like every single time there was something bad that happened in the show. I'm like, I kind of want to stop hearing about this show.
Yeah, but it's amazing that somebody else makes it. Well, actually, I guess it's not.
Actually, I think everybody's been pointing it out.
Well, that's what this whole article is about, is that fans are furious at all this.
Amber was like that too. Yeah, I'm glad they pointed that one out. I've been seeing a lot of people lumping her into it because that was a character that they completely changed from the Invincible comics just to make her that way in the show.
Who was? I watched the Invincible first season.
There was the chick he was dating, who was originally a blonde-haired girl in the comic, but they made her black in Invincible.
So when she found out.
Well, she knew, apparently, for since at least like the college or whatever, and she was like waiting for him to finally come out to her so that she could basically be mad at him and dump him.
That's real nice.
Yeah, well, in the comic, she was waiting for him to come out to her when he felt ready so she could be supportive. Like, they completely pulled a 180 on the character.
Yeah.
Okay, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't remember that in the cartoon, but it's only had one season, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like near the end. It was like basically just before the big encounter with his dad.
Uh-huh.
Right.
I'll have to rewatch that. Anyways, go on, Mike.
All right, yeah. I just wanted to. So we're at hour 33 already. So we're making good time here, at least. The discussion, all that. Quote: This is the worst trope in superhero media. Unquote. At Dynamo Super X declared. Quote: Love interest friend gets mad when they find out their partner is a superhero, just like Amber on Invincible. It's unrealistic and creates unnecessary angst. Again, as previously mentioned.
Oh, I could see somebody getting mad if their significant other's been a superhero for, you've been married 50 years and you find out they've been a superhero. It would be more like, like True Lies. Not true.
Yeah, there's a line of tolerability, but like if you barely even started dating the person, you expect to know every single thing about their life.
if you really think about that, if you really sit there and think about that for a moment, you just start dating and you expect to know every single detail about the person's life.
Yeah.
What does that sound like to you guys?
Actually, almost sounds
Controlling.
like a stalker.
Well, metal hit the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Stalker or stalkerish, right? Stalkerish, like that's
Yeah,
stalker
to
like
some
behavior.
degree.
Some secrets are good to keep, like what you're getting your girlfriend or boyfriend for Christmas or their birthday,
Or what you buried in the backyard last week. It's probably better off you don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, quote, just to be clear, I'm not saying Lois is the same as Amber, unquote, they noted. Quote, Amber was much worse. I only brought her up because it's just another example of the same trope. Lena Luthor on Supergirl is probably the worst example of this trope considering she went full villain, unquote.
Oh yeah.
Quote, I really hate the in smaller quotes an omission. Well, they said a omission, but that should probably be an omission. It's still a lie on smaller quote line of thinking sometimes used in superhero writing, unquote. At Cario Aetos proclaimed, quote, having alter egos is meant to protect those you care for so that your villains don't attack them. But it just so happens one of those people the hero cares for is always like, in smaller quotes, "Bah, why didn't you tell me?" On smaller quote, um, because you're acting like a hysterical female dog, you heifer.
Yeah. Well, although I'm sort of going with what Metal said a little earlier. Not telling them doesn't protect them from the villain necessarily, because yeah, if they know, but the villain, just because they know doesn't mean everybody else is going to know that you're dating. Superman is dating in his alter ego Lois Lane. But it's
But a
like,
villain might, because they're
yeah,
they're stalking you. If anybody's stalking you, it's a villain.
yeah. If they find out, yeah, if Superman's dating such and such, you know, it,
I think if anybody's safe, though, out of all the people who date superheroes, it's Lois. Especially because, like, it's weird to consider Superman an alter ego. It technically is. Clark doesn't tell people he's Superman, but most people don't even assume that Superman has an alter ego. Like, some people find out that he's living a life, but most people just like think, oh, if he's not flying around saving the city, he's just at the Fortress of Solitude. It's not like obvious that if you were a villain, you would think he'd be living as a reporter or even just any civilian. Like it's not something you would immediately jump to. That's just something that we as like the audience are privileged to getting to read from an outside perspective.
Yeah, what's kind of funny too, because I know that this has been mentioned in some of the cartoons in the past too, whereas um, whereas what they talk a lot of times they talk about where the alter ego is the real person and the superhero identity is the persona. But what they talk about in Superman is it's more like the exact opposite. In other words, Superman's the actual person of Clark, and Clark is more the mask.
It's a disguise, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, whereas
no, it's been said Clark is who he is. Superman is what he can do.
I don't know about that. Like, I know a lot of people have said that, but I'm actually kind of agreeing with Mike here. Clark is who he wishes he could be. Like, he wishes he didn't have to be Superman, right? But Superman is the morality he grew up with. And even to some degree, when they do go back to Smallville, it's kind of the way he acted when he was younger, before he had to take on a disguise or anything. Clark, being mild manner, is kind of disguised so people wouldn't expect him. Not that people really have to expect him anyway, but I think Clark is his dream. I think Clark is the world that Superman wishes he could live in.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's why I say
know.
that's who he is. I guess I mean personality and all that.
I think Superman's
Yeah.
his personality.
Like,
But
as I understand the reasoning, most of the superheroes, the alter ego is the person, and then their superhero identity is the
what they can do. Although it's been
I
said
mean,
with Batman Batman is who
Oh yeah, I think
he
Bruce
is, and
identifies as Batman.
Bruce is the disguise.
Yeah, he
but
plays
I know that
the
the thing they
playboy
talked
billionaire
about is
philanthropist.
in Clark Superman's case, it's opposite from what the other heroes are. That's the point I was getting at.
Yeah, I think both Superman and Batman fall into that boat for slightly different reasons, but I think both of them are their heroes. And to some degree, when they're going out in daily life, they're disguising themselves. Because I think if Superman didn't have to disguise himself, the behavior of Clark would be somewhere between both him and Superman.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. So in a sense, they're both.
Actually, I do remember a story that I once read the synopsis for, and I think you read the story partly before, where they actually did kind of have that happen, where Clark had kind of lost his memory of being Superman, and so he still somehow subconsciously acted on Superman's impulses as Clark. As he wasn't.
Yeah, because those were the morals he was raised with. That's why he
Yeah.
does what Superman does.
Yeah, he fight. Well, I guess what they mean by like Superman is what he can do. Like Clark. What was it? I think Final Night, because Superman lost his powers because of the sun going out, right? So he was still out there trying to fight crime.
Like I'm trying to think of the right word for, like, I think as Metal pointed out, I think in terms of like Superman, Batman are who they really are.
Yeah.
And their alter egos are the facade.
Yeah, well, part of Clark is obviously
for lack of a better term.
I think part of both of them are a facade.
I think for most of the other heroes, it's the other way around. It's
the
people they are in their civilian guises are who they really are, and the heroes are kind of, for lack of a better term, the facade.
I think that's definitely true with what we said for Batman, but I think Clark is needed. Maybe more with Clark is he's more in between both of them.
I'm going to step back. I'm going to say it's actually the same for both of them. I think both of them are both parts of them. Right?
Okay.
Like, I actually don't think either is a facade. Right? And part of this just actually comes down to human psychology. And a lot of us are different people in different aspects of our life. Like, we act differently depending on what position we're in at the time. And I do believe specifically for Superman, and I can make some arguments for Batman too, but I believe that Superman is fully both Clark Kent and Superman. I think both of them are just aspects of himself, and he would act as either depending on the situation. And it does come down to Superman is morally the person he has to be, because that's who he is at his core. But Clark is also the person he wants to be. Like, that's the life he would love to live. If the world wasn't always in peril, this is how he would choose to live. I think both of them are equally Clark Kent.
Yeah. Because
I was just using the term facade for lack of a better term too.
Yeah.
So.
All he does is Clark to disguise is, slouch and be a bit bumbling,
Yeah.
But the same things almost Superman would say, he would say. They might phrase it a little differently as Clark.
Well, yeah. Well,
Clark does lie a lot.
The idea I was getting at was that for Clark and Batman, it's one way, For the other heroes, it's another. It's like the opposite.
Yeah.
That's where I was really going with it.
Yeah, I get
Like,
that. I get that, Mike. I'm just happen. I guess discussing it,
I may not have
saying
been able
whether
to
I
find the
agree or
right
disagree.
exact
Yeah,
word.
no,
Really
and I agree with
right
that.
it.
Most heroes are that way. I just don't. I don't think for Superman and Batman that it is like in the exact opposite direction. I think they're in this very weird middle ground that very few heroes occupy. Right. Like I would say if there was one who was probably closer to the other way, it would have been Iron Man before Tony Stark came out as Iron Man.
Yeah.
So, anyway, let's get back to the article here.
Yeah.
I mean, we're having a good discussion and all that because we're at least exchanging some pretty interesting thoughts and ideas here. So, anyways, quote, no, they dragged Lois to the same depths as Iris West and Mary Jane Watson, unquote, at Passion Sod, weighed in. Quote, seriously, when did reporter girlfriends throwing themselves, I think that's supposed to be off, not of, off buildings, fully expecting their super boyfriends to save them without complication or hindrance, become a trope? At least, the other two were done with trust, unquote.
I'm not sure what they're exactly talking about with Iris West and Mary Jane. Either of you might know.
I'm trying to think about that because I know I'm not super fluent with Flash. Like I'm no expert on Flash to even remember.
And I haven't got
them.
that. I haven't got to that point with to Iris yet in terms of reading. Like when I was doing the historical comic retrospect for myself, when I was just focusing on DC. The furthest I got was into the early '60s. So Wally West was. If I was reading anything about Wally West at the time, it was him as Kid Flash.
No. Well, Iris West was Barry's girlfriend.
Yes.
She was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Iris was the aunt of
Wally. Nephew.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It may not surprise you. I'm more of a Superman guy.
So I don't know quite what they're meaning with.
And I haven't like the only thing about most of what I know about Mary Jane Watson from the '90s cartoon.
Yeah, I read quite a bit of Spider-Man, and I've read quite a bit of Flash, but it was more Wally West Flash that I've read a lot of.
All right, so continuing on here, My Adventures with Superman is not the first time Lois Lane forced Superman's hand into revealing his identity. Other fans compared Lois's outing of Clark in My Adventures with Superman to previous iterations of the character, including Smallville, Richard Donner's Superman 2, and comic books. And of course, we've been mentioning those throughout.
Yeah, and Superman 2 is the one I brought up.
Yeah, but here, look, he's saving her right as Clark too. Usually he doesn't end up doing that. He saves her in some other way.
But this is again probably the brainchild of these SJW writers and editors, just wanting to to wipe their butts with the legacy.
Well, I do have a theory.
Okay.
That we were talking about, Mike, when you were off screen before. I do have a theory about all this that we could get to at the end of the article.
I was going to say, like in Superman 2, like he doesn't, she jumps into like Niagara Falls or whatever, the river, and Clark, doesn't swoop down and save her, but, lasers off a branch or something like that she can catch or whatever without her seeing,
So Metal, did you just say that you were going to wait for me to finish the article before you?
Yeah, you can finish the article and then I'll go into my theory.
Okay. So, quote, this scene from hashtag my Adventures with Superman is kind of in character for Lois, but it's also one of my least favorite aspects of her, and I wish writers would stop using that, unquote. At B. Bailey, or B. Bawley, derided, quote, "It was annoying when done in the comics, it was annoying when done in Superman 2, and it was annoying here," unquote.
Yeah, but that's it's annoying, but it's not, in my opinion. It just shows to me one thing: how much trust she has in Clark, or how much she believes she's right, that she's willing to risk her life for this belief.
Which
So
that is a very lowest thing to do.
here are the I guess here are
What,
the
metal?
That's a very lowest thing to do.
Yeah.
So here are some of the, I guess, scenes from the um, different versions of it happening.
Yeah, 2 spots in the Richard Donner Superman there.
So alongside panels from different Superman comics depicting the different stages of Clark and Lois's relationship, at Black D Gamer 1 pointed out, quote, "This feels like two love-struck teenagers trying to awkwardly navigate their way through high school. This is not Superman, nor is this Lois Lane," unquote. I even though I haven't watched beyond the first 5 minutes, I would almost have to agree, because it almost seems like, in some ways, while they aged up Jimmy Olsen in this series, it almost seems like they de-aged Clark and Lois as well.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, for this Jimmy reminds me of Bo in the new She-Ra series.
Yeah. So alongside panel, oh wait, we already read that part. Okay. Quote: "The two always kept a cordial yet professional adult relationship," unquote. He added, quote, "slowly growing into a romance. Clark should have been way more in control of the situation. Even when Lois did finally discover Clark's secret identity, she handled it pretty well," unquote.
Yeah, because he does eventually reveal it to her in the comics.
Yeah. So here's another, I guess, panel. And this is, of course, the screenshot of
and it was showing where he revealed himself before in the comics there.
Yeah. Quote: "Remember in Smallville when a female love interest found out Clark's secret?" In parentheses, at least 3 did. Lois, Lana, and Chloe, I take it. That's who they're talking about?
Yeah.
And then they kept the secret. Aunt Novacus Maximus recalled, quote, "They didn't tell Clark they knew. They respected his privacy and his wishes, and even helped keep his secret from others. Did no one watch that show?"
Not these people. I don't think they read the comics either.
No, they just want to put. They just want to just turd all over the legacy of Superman. That's all they seem to want to do. For that matter, for a lot of classic Golden Age characters.
Yeah.
They just want to turd all over them. Quote: "This is such incredibly toxic behavior from Lois, attempting to commit suicide to force his hand, and then still reacting like a petty female dog when he revealed his secret to save her
effing life."
Yeah, his bleeping life, her bleeping life. At HM Bohemond, decried, quote, "And what's worse is the show portrays her as in the right." Of course, that's because that's what SJWs do. What have I been saying since you've known me, Rick?
I forget. Probably something I know, but
from the book of Isaiah. We seem to be in the time where
good becomes bad and bad becomes good.
Wrong is called right, and right is called wrong. Right?
Yeah.
This is such such a bad lesson, not an bad lesson, a bad lesson, to be teaching children watching this show, especially girls. Yeah, I unquote. In fact, if you think about it, this is almost like this is almost the Me Too angle a bit going too.
Well, no. Unfortunately,
this is underlying behavior of what leads to the Me Too argument. Like where
no, I wouldn't say that, but there's been an old adage for a long time: happy wife, happy life. In other words, never argue with your wife; she's always right. Just pretend that she's always right, even when she's wrong. So they're not held to account. It's like if you're wrong, you're wrong.
So at quote, and yes, I know the Richard Donner movies did similar, unquote. She acknowledged, quote, it was poopy
Shitty.
back then, too, with Lois acting like a sociopath. Wow, calling Lois a sociopath.
Yeah. Well, the trope might be a bit.
But then again, I would argue that almost all SJWs are sociopaths.
Yeah.
Well, this is prior to that. She's talking about the Superman 2, or even just Superman 1, the Donner movies back in the day. Lois is a sociopath.
Yeah, but I disagree with that. It's just like I said earlier. She just believes it so much that she's willing to risk her life.
Well, I disagree that she's a sociopath for that reason. I think that Lois Lane actually is a psychopath for actual clinical reasons of what makes a psychopath. But also some of the most successful people in their fields are psychopaths, and that's why they're so successful. That doesn't mean they're going to go around hurting people. It just means that they are driven towards just that one thing. And I do actually believe that Lois is a psychopath.
Is the correct term nowadays. Metal.
Well, there's psychopaths and sociopaths.
They don't use the term psychopath anymore. They use
it depends where you are. They do still use both, even in like the DS5, and they're basically synonymous. They just mean the same thing.
Yeah, but she at least still appreciated why Clark kept it a secret and didn't guilt trip him for it. Unquote. New episodes of My Adventures with Superman premiere Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Pacific on Adult Swim and Fridays on Max. And as I said, also is replayed on Toonami at 12 midnight Eastern, 12 midnight Eastern Pacific.
No, I got a dumb question. Anybody know how many episodes there's supposed to be for the season?
No,
I don't know off the top of my head.
I would assume at most 12, because you're lucky if you get any more than that in a season these days.
Yeah. The only reason I ask is because maybe after the season...
I could very easily look that up and find that out.
Yeah. The only reason I ask is because maybe at the end of the season I might download it. I can't be bothered downloading it every week. But downloading it once, I might. Everything at once.
Actually, according to Wikipedia, it is slated for one season, but 6 episodes.
Well, so the thing is, 6 episodes are out right now. There is a 7th one that's supposed to be coming out on August 11th, according to IMDb.
Yeah, it may be needing to be updated because
we know they've already done. Maybe the wiki's just saying what's out so far. It's not saying what's.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. As I'm looking over the episodes here, so yeah, you have up to 6 episodes, but it looks like they are going 10 episodes because this Friday will be the 7th episode. Kiss Kiss Fall and Portal. 8 and 9, I guess, is a 2-part episode. I guess 0 Day, and then Hearts of the Fathers is episode 10. So,
actually, that next episode is when Mixia Split Lick is showing up.
But Kiss Kiss Fall and Portal?
Yeah. The synopsis is
Mix Yes Spitlick.
Spitlick, yep. Clark tries to plan a normal date without any Superman problems, but gets interrupted when Mr. Mixia-Spitalik sweeps him, Jimmy, and Lois into a high-stakes multiverse-hopping chase.
Yeah, so let's see. We're at 154.
Yeah.
we're coming
So
up
that
on-
actually came to my theory, right? And what really hit me was when I actually saw the preview image for Misha Spigalik, right? And when I saw him, he looked nothing like Mixie normally looks in other like comics, media, whatever he pops up in. He actually ended up looking like a knockoff of the Supreme Kai from Dragon Ball Z, the way they made him, right? And
here's the thing. It's interesting because Earth 2 and Earth 1, the character are both, they basically have the same kind of power, extra dimensional powers and all that, but they are different in that, one, their names are slightly different, and two, their look is slightly different. So the Earth 2 version of the character is Mr. Mix Tip. Let's see. Mix, yes, Tip Lick. And the Earth 1 version is Mr. Mix, yes, Spit Lick.
yes.
So they
use
a couple of letters around, to slightly. And of course, the Earth 2 version is the version that we all grew up on when we were watching the Super Friends.
Yeah.
And also, they actually had that version in the Filmation cartoon as well. Just in the Filmation cartoon, they had his hair as being kind of a reddish auburn brown color, whereas in the Super Friends cartoon, the Hanna-Barbera's, it was white. The Earth 1 version, he was dressed more like he was like in the Superman the animated series one, where he was kind of more like in a business.
That's what they got him looking like in this new Superman series?
Yes, that is what he looks like in the Superman series. Like I said, he looks nothing like Mixie does in any appearance. He looked like the Supreme Kai from Dragon Ball Z. And that's what made me lean on to what my theory is, right? So after looking at this and then looking at both Lois and Clark and how they act together, right, it made me realize that they seem more like another couple, which is Gohan and Videl from Dragon Ball Z, who Gohan, during his stint living in the city when he was going to college, also had a superhero persona called the Great Saiyan Man, right? That Videl finds out who he is after they become a couple at a fighting tournament. And personality-wise, this Lois acts more like Videl than she does like Lois, and even Clark kind of acts more like Gohan than he does like Clark. I think, because I knew a lot of people like this growing up, right? The writers are my age group, that there were a lot of girls in high school that only liked Dragon Ball because they liked they liked adult Gohan, and they even started writing fan fictions about Gohan and Videl. I think the people writing the show like Gohan and Videl more than they like Superman and Lois, and this is the story that they'd rather be writing, and they put their personalities on them instead of actually making them act like Superman and Lois.
Well. Here's something else that might add a little more flavor to your theory there.
Especially look at Videl and look at the way Lois look; they look the same.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing that might throw a little more flavor on that particular theory too, because one of the other articles I covered on this story, on this thing going on with this, a previous article I covered about how fans were upset that they somewhat race swapped Lois here as well. Do you know the nationality Lois that they're claiming Lois to be here?
No, it seemed like it was vaguely Asian.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Korean.
Korean.
And that's because
the voice they're depicting her as Korean here. So they not only race swapped Jimmy and Perry to be African American, they race swapped Lois here, and that caused a lot of theory as well.
Just because her voice actress is Korean.
Yeah. So So that puts maybe a little bit more flavor on your theory there, Metal.
Well, what's
Again,
funny is I think Videl as a character is half Asian, because her dad's from the U.S. I think he might even have some vaguely Native American background, but she's supposed to be like clearly mixed. But the funny thing is, because Superman has blue eyes and because they made her Korean, they gave her dark eyes. They actually kind of swapped it because Videl has blue eyes and Gohan, until he becomes Super Saiyan, has like blackish brown eyes. They only turn blue when they go Super Saiyan. So it's like somehow this stuff maybe accidentally, unintentionally just ended up being the same. But I do have the theory that these are the characters they'd rather be writing. They're weird, woke fan fiction for, and not the ones they ended
they're
up
just somehow subconsciously writing those aspects into these characters.
Yes.
He's thinking consciously they're doing it.
Maybe a little of both. I don't know, but even some of these other aspects I think might be subconscious because there are conscious aspects to it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just great. Well, the other way that they've done Mr. Mitchell Pitalik before is that he was in Lois and Clark and he was like a full grown adult person. It's like I wasn't big on that version. Although I think I'd like that version more than the version that you just showed, Metal.
Yeah, this just really feels like a Dragon Ball ripoff to me, which I really dislike because I like Superman and Dragon Ball completely for their own things. Even though I do think Superman has had some slight influence on Dragon Ball later on, mostly because of the English adaptation changed some things. They gave Goku a speech that he didn't really have, but Toriyama really liked that speech, and he's like, you know what, I want Goku to act more like that, and I think that even influenced why he did Gohan and Saiyaman later after that adaptation.
Yeah. So with Mr. Mixia Spitlick in like the Super Friends cartoon, of course, Frank Welker, who we've talked about before, he was the one who provided the voice of Mixie in the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and particularly in the Super Friends cartoons. And then they got Gilbert Godfrey
That was my favorite
to
version.
voice Mr. Mixia Spitlick in the 90s in the PCAU version of
the show that was just Superman with an exclamation mark that people call Superman the animated series.
Yeah. So let's see. We're just past the 2-hour mark now, so I think it's probably a good time. I think we got through a couple of interesting articles there. Wouldn't you guys say?
Yeah.
All right, so it's probably a good time to start wrapping things up a bit here. So what we'll do here now is we will go ahead and do this weekend in H history. Then we will wrap things up. So let me just double check some things here. All right. So without any further ado, today is Sunday, August the 6th, 2023. So we're of course going to take a look back at this weekend in Nietzsche history. So the first off, we're going to head back 40 years ago yesterday. And on this date, 40 years ago yesterday, the Lucasfilms animated adventure fantasy comedy film, Twice Upon a Time, co-directed by John Corby and Charles Swanson, premiered in movie theaters on yesterday's date back in 1983. From the looks of it, looks like the first animated film produced by George Lucas that uses a form of cutout animation, which filmmakers called Lumage, involving prefabricated cutout plastic pieces that the animators moved on a light table. Um, the film featured improvised dialogue and a visual blend of live action, traditional 2D animation, and stop motion. So, on yesterday's date, 40 years ago today, Lucasfilm's Twice Upon a Time premiered in movie theaters.
The same type of technology that would later be used to make the show South Park.
All right.
Except with pieces of construction paper instead.
For a cheaper production value.
Yes.
All right, now moving on to the year 2000, yesterday, 10 years ago yesterday, to the 2013 on yesterday's date, 10 years ago, WWE had its Monday Night Raw event from the Resch Center Arena in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The show, the main event of that show, saw Daniel Bryan, John Cena, and Randy Orton defeat The Shield, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins by DQ. Biggie Langston defeated Dolph Ziggler. The Real Americans, Antonio Cesaro, a.k.a. Claudio Castagnoli, and Jack Swagger defeated the Usos. And of course, I'll talk more about SummerSlam that happened last night tomorrow on the show, part of the wrestling route. You saw the Wyatt family defeat the Tons of Funk. You saw a number of matches here that show. But anyways, 10 years ago yesterday, Monday Night Raw from the Resch Center Arena in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And finally, final piece of niche
news from yesterday.
Actually, this one's from today.
Oh, okay.
On this date, 20 years ago today, back in 2003, the fifth and final issue of Batman Nevermore went on sale on this date back 20 years ago today. It sold for $250, and it was 32 pages. The title of the story was Mask of the Red Death, written by Len Wayne, art by Guy Davis. John E. Workman Jr. did the lettering, and I believe Jeremy N. Cox did the coloring. So 20 years ago today, fifth and final issue of Batman Nevermore went on sale on that day. So before we head out, we're going to give everybody a chance to do one final outro, and then I'll of course wrap things up with an outro of my own. I'll start, of course, with Rick. We'll go Rick, Metal, and then I'll wrap things up. So Rick, go ahead, and of course, as always, if you guys want to reshare links, feel free to do so.
Well, as you probably all know out there, I am Rick Piper of Cross Comics, and I do comic books, videos, all sorts of different things on my channel, and trying to create my own comic book universe, which I'm promoting there along with other stuff. So here's a link to my YouTube channel. And to you, Metal.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm the Metal. Like I said earlier, I do everything. So it's always hard to figure out what to promote, but since this was the last thing I made, you can go over to youtube.com/TMTV122, my kind of team production channel, 12.2 TMTV, and you can check out what I learned in horror movies. It's a little obscene, but it's humor. So that's you be prepared for whatever you get. There's no actual horror movie that shows up in there either. They just talk about it. It's fun. All the stuff I make on that channel is fun, and that's it.
Hey, Metal, I want to ask something because I was noticing something. Mm-hmm. So I know you in your background there. You got some pictures, kind of slide. I guess you got them on a slideshow. So there's that one picture where you got the three girls there, the kind of, I guess, lime green hair color girl.
Oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about. That's from my series On Tour with Mitch and Sandy.
Okay, that looked like an anime scene to me. I thought it was right.
Well, it was highly inspired off of Rumiko Takahashi's work, so that's how I did the style of that cover.
Ruma. So I know at least the one piece of work from him was Inuyasha.
Yeah, she did Inuyasha, Ranma One Half, Urusei Yatsura, sometimes called those obnoxious aliens. It's Invader
Oh
Lyn.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've always wanted to see the original dub of the original English dub of the original like 80s. But
I've seen
apparently
it.
I can't
It's
find it
joyfully
anywhere.
awful.
Huh?
I've seen it. It's joyfully awful.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. I think they have 1 or 2 episodes on it, but I would have liked to see like more of that because that looked
I
like
think
it.
here's a fun
I
one,
know.
right?
I know that the production company that does it is Studio Pero, and I like a lot of their stuff because
Mhm.
Studio Pero is like Yu Yu Hakusho, Bleach, I think Naruto. Those are all from Studio Pero right there.
Yeah, so there's actually a better dub, but it doesn't do the whole show. It might have been up to 10 episodes, but it might have only been 4. But there was a very briefly lived British, like UK dub of it, and just the way the voices are, and they are overly British voices. It's just amazing to listen to that very short dub of it,
Yeah.
in like a funny way.
Yeah. Now I do know that they have the reboot series out and
Which is
available.
great. I loved it.
Yeah, the one from 2022. I think, from what I understand, they kind of condensed the story a bit, and then, yeah, because again, I like Studio Pero, and I know that one was another one that ran for a long time. I really wanted to see it, but just the original '80s dub is just not available anywhere, it would seem.
Yeah.
So I'm
Well, what's funny
disappointed.
is they kind of didn't condense the story. They did from the original TV show. Because the original TV show, I think they ran for nearly 100 episodes. So they really
Yeah.
like stretched it out, made it very, very episodic because the chapters, it was almost written sitcom-y in the first place. But they almost did it like by chapter length. This one, they're doing 45 episodes, but only half of it's been out so far. So they're doing it in like 2 season span. I'm waiting for the second half to drop. But there's only 34 volumes of the original series. So they've actually stretched the volumes out to kind of match episode length better.
Yeah, because my sketchbook is here. A little late now.
Hey, Sketchbook.
Yeah.
Hey, Sketch.
Hey, sketchbook. Yeah.
How are you?
I'm just sorry you got here this late because we're pretty much already done with everything. We're just about wrapping up here. But
Yeah. But even the one that was on just before that.
The replay if you want to check out what we talked about. So we had some pretty good conversations. So with that, okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here, of course. So as you guys know, this is the Mikestand. This is our weekend edition, our panel show. Let's see what. Good. I'm about to go out and deliver stuff.
Oh, that's good. Sketchbook, how close are you? I keep asking you, how close are you to that cover?
Yeah. So anyways, we go 6 nights a week. That's okay. All right. Of course, Monday through Thursday we do a niche newscast. Now, as per requested by one of our viewers, J.R. Exner, and Rick, if you can pass this along to him tomorrow in your show if you happen to see him, drop in on high noon and all that. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a special episode. I'm going to go over the wiki page of Canadian comics history as requested by J.R. Exner. Now, of course, we're not going to, again, I'm in the States here. I focus on American comic book history, but we'll at least touch upon, talk a little bit about Canadian comic history since we do have some Canadian fans like Rick and JR. So we'll take a look at that. So tomorrow night we'll be, just doing a general overview of Canadian comics history, which their golden age of con started in 1941, from what I've seen preliminarily. Also, this Friday, Metal will be joining me as we will be continuing our historical comics retrospect. We'll be second to the last week of our coverage from November of 1939. This week we'll be looking at books that went on sale in November of 1939 from Lev Gleason. The one book was, of course, Silver Streak, Volume 1, Number 2, with features such as The Claw and The Wasp. Not the Marvel versions, mind you. These are completely different versions. But Metal, you'll be joining me. I'll be looking forward to that. And I heard you'll be looking forward to, because these will be new characters for you to be looking at, new books and stuff that you never heard of before. So I'm glad to hear that. I hope you guys will join me every night do this, to get in on whether you're getting caught up on the most recent stuff going on in the world of Nietzsche, or taking a look back at comics history as we've been doing on Fridays, or even joining us when we're doing our panel show and we get everybody in to talk all things Nietzsche. So until tomorrow, bye.
It's only a day out.